"Sir, that robot leg needs special screening. What are you, some kind of cyborg?" The security agent laughed at Colonel Rebecca Mitchell's prosthetic leg. 8 minutes later, the aircraft captain personally escorted her past that same agent to a first-class seat. Colonel Rebecca Becky Mitchell, U.S. Army retired, had faced countless challenges during her 32-year military career. At 65, she carried herself with the same dignified bearing that had commanded respect throughout her service. But airports remained a necessary evil in civilian life, a chaotic contrast to the structured military environment she thrived in for decades. Her advanced prosthetic leg, a marvel of military medical technology, was both blessing and curse. The cutting-edge composite materials and integrated sensors allowed her remarkable mobility after losing her leg to an IED in Afghanistan's Helmand province. But the sophisticated components inevitably triggered every security scanner she encountered. Today's journey was non-negotiable. Her granddaughter Sophia was graduating summa cum laude from Northwestern University, the first in their family to earn a master's degree. Nothing would keep Becky from witnessing that moment of triumph. She prepared meticulously for the airport gauntlet. Comfortable travel slacks that partially concealed the prosthetic, a neat button-down shirt, and a light blazer that conveyed professionalism without drawing attention. Her military ID and VA documentation explaining her medical device were tucked in an easily accessible pocket of her carry-on. Becky approached security with a strategic mindset that served her through 3 combat deployments. She'd arrived 90 minutes early, allowing ample time for the inevitable secondary screening. She'd selected a checkpoint lane staffed by older agents, who in her experience showed more professionalism with medical devices. Despite her preparations, a familiar tension tightened her shoulders as she placed her belongings in plastic bins. The prosthetic felt suddenly heavier, a visible reminder of sacrifice that civilians often misunderstood. She took a deep breath, drawing on the same calm focus that had guided her through defusing explosives, a skill that earned her the nickname Steady Becky among her unit. Just another mission, she reminded herself, stepping toward the metal detector with practiced composure, already anticipating the alarm she knew would sound. The metal detector shrieked predictably as Becky passed through. The older female agent gestured her aside with professional nod, but then a younger male agent named Parker swooped in. "I'll handle this one, Jen," he announced, eyeing Becky's leg with exaggerated suspicion. His badge read T. Parker, and his posture radiated the misplaced authority of someone who confused procedure with power. "Ma'am, step over here," Parker commanded, his tone immediately condescending. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" He pointed directly at her prosthetic. "It's a prosthetic leg, sir," Becky explained calmly. "I have documentation from a VA, and..." Yeah, everyone's got documentation," Parker interrupted with air quotes. "But that thing is setting off every alarm we've got." He leaned closer, examining the visible portion where the prosthetic joined her thigh. "Looks more like something from a sci-fi movie than medical equipment. What's it made of, anyway? Alien technology?" Several travelers in line glanced over, drawn by Parker's deliberately loud commentary. Becky felt her cheeks warm with unwanted attention. "It's a DoD-issued advanced prosthetic," she stated firmly. "Military grade, designed for veterans with combat injuries." Parker smirked. "Military grade. Huh? So what? It transforms into a weapon? Got a hidden compartment for smuggling." He turned to a colleague. "Hey, Mark, check out RoboCop here." The colleague glanced over, then quickly looked away, clearly uncomfortable with Parker's behavior. The older agent, Jen, frowned disapprovingly but remained at her station. Becky straightened her posture, her voice dropping to the quiet, controlled tone that had once commanded hundreds of soldiers. "This prosthetic replaces a leg I lost to an improvised explosive device in Afghanistan. There is nothing amusing about it." Something in her demeanor made several nearby passengers shift uncomfortably, recognizing the dignity being violated before them. A middle-aged woman in line shot Parker a disgusted look. Undeterred, Parker's smirk widened. "Afghanistan, sure. And I'm James Bond. Look, lady, rules are rules. That sci-fi contraption needs full secondary screening. Swabs, pat down, the works." He gestured toward a frosted glass enclosure. Right this way to the special room. And try not to power up any hidden lasers while we're in there. A muscle tightened in Becky's jaw, but decades of military discipline held her anger in check. She'd faced Taliban fighters and complex explosive devices. She could handle one petty security agent. With ramrod-straight posture that belied her years, she walked toward the secondary screening area. Acutely aware of the stares following her and the burning humiliation Parker seemed determined to inflict. Inside the glass-walled screening room, Becky endured the secondary inspection with stoic dignity. A different agent conducted the actual screening professionally enough, carefully swabbing her prosthetic for explosive residue and performing a respectful pat-down. Parker, however, hovered nearby, making no attempt to hide his continued amusement at her expense. "Make sure you check all those fancy joints and wires," he called out. "Never know what might be hidden in there." Then, in a stage whisper to another passing agent, $10 says she's got a flask built into that thing." Becky fixed her gaze on a point on the wall, employing the same mental techniques she'd used during hostage negotiation training. She'd weathered sandstorms in Iraq and firefights in Afghanistan. She would weather this indignity too. The screening agent looked apologetically at her as he completed his work. "Everything checks out, ma'am. Thank you for your patience." Becky nodded, gathering her belongings with practiced efficiency. She checked her watch. The unnecessary delay had eaten into her carefully planned buffer time. Boarding for her flight would begin in 15 minutes. As she reattached her belt and slipped on her shoes, Parker reappeared at the doorway. "All clear, Terminator? No hidden weapons of mass destruction." He chuckled at his own wit. "I need to reach my gate," Becky replied evenly. "My flight, board soon." Parker shrugged dramatically. "Security takes as long as security takes. Not my problem if people miss flights because of their unusual attachments." A cold anger settled in Becky's chest, the kind she felt only a few times in her life. Like when a young lieutenant in her command had been needlessly endangered by poor intelligence. She gathered her carry-on, her hand closing around the small velvet box containing the gift for her granddaughter. A pair of silver oak leaf pins that had marked Becky's own promotion to lieutenant colonel decades ago. The thought of missing that graduation ceremony because of this man's petty power trip was unbearable. Yet she knew that challenging him directly would only cause further delays. She moved toward the exit, her prosthetic feeling unusually heavy under the weight of humiliation. That's when she heard a new voice cut through the ambient airport noise, calm, authoritative, and unmistakably accustomed to command. "I'm looking for a security agent named Parker. I understand he's been screening a passenger with a prosthetic leg. Colonel Rebecca Mitchell. Where is he?" The voice carried the natural authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Captain Michael Reynolds stood at the main security checkpoint, his pilot's uniform immaculate, his posture reflecting his 20 years as a Marine Corps aviator before joining commercial aviation. Parker froze mid-smirk, his face suddenly uncertain. All security personnel recognized that tone, the voice of someone who outranked everyone in the immediate vicinity. Captain Reynolds spotted Parker and approached with purposeful strides. "Are you Agent Parker?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. "Why, yes, sir," Parker stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating. "I'm Captain Reynolds, commanding Flight 217 to Chicago. I received information about your conduct toward one of my passengers." The captain's eyes were steel. "Colonel Mitchell is a decorated combat veteran who lost her leg in service to this country. I understand you've been making jokes about her prosthetic." Parker's face paled. "Sir, I was just following protocol." Her prosthetic triggered multiple alarms. "Protocol," Captain Reynolds interrupted, "includes treating all passengers with dignity and respect. It does not include mockery, particularly of those who've sacrificed for this country." He turned as Becky emerged from the screening area. "Colonel Mitchell?" "Captain Michael Reynolds. I apologize for interrupting, but I received word about the situation here." Becky looked surprised. "Captain? How did you?" Reynolds nodded toward the older security agent. "Agent Jen recognized your military ID and was concerned about your treatment. She contacted our gate agent, who informed me immediately." Jen, maintaining her post but clearly listening, gave a small nod of acknowledgement. The security of our passengers is paramount, Reynolds continued, addressing both Becky and the growing audience of security personnel and travelers. But security without respect isn't security at all. It's harassment. He turned back to Parker. Agent Parker, I'm formally requesting your supervisor's presence. A gray-haired woman in a security management uniform was already approaching, her expression grave. I'm Supervisor Wilson. What seems to be the problem, Captain? Your agent here has been publicly mocking Colonel Mitchell's combat-related disability, Reynolds stated, making jokes about her prosthetic leg, comparing her to movie robots, suggesting she might be smuggling contraband in her medical device, and causing her unnecessary delay and humiliation. Several nearby passengers nodded in confirmation. The middle-aged woman who had glared at Parker earlier stepped forward. I witnessed it too. It was completely unprofessional. Supervisor Wilson's face tightened. Agent Parker, step aside, please. She turned to Becky. Colonel, on behalf of airport security, I offer my sincere apologies. This is not how we train our personnel to behave. Becky acknowledged the apology with a slight nod, her military bearing never faltering despite the unexpected turn of events. For the first time since entering the airport, she felt something other than tension, a surprising sense of vindication as the tables turned on her tormentor. Agent Parker, Captain Reynolds said, his voice carrying throughout the now-quiet checkpoint area. You owe Colonel Mitchell an apology, a proper one. Parker shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between his supervisor, the captain, and the small crowd of onlookers that had formed. I apologize for any misunderstanding, he muttered. That's not an apology, Reynolds stated flatly. That's deflection. Supervisor Wilson stepped closer to Parker. Agent Parker, you will apologize properly to Colonel Mitchell right now, or you can surrender your badge and leave the premises immediately. Parker swallowed hard, finally meeting Becky's steady gaze. I apologize for my unprofessional behavior and disrespectful comments about your prosthetic, Colonel Mitchell. It was inappropriate and wrong. Becky acknowledged the apology with a dignified nod. Accepted. Now I need to catch my flight. This incident doesn't end with an apology, Supervisor Wilson assured her. Agent Parker is being removed from duty pending a full investigation. She turned to Parker. Report to HR immediately. Leave your credentials with them. Parker's face flushed with embarrassment as he unclipped his badge. The tables had turned completely. Now he was the one being publicly humiliated. Additionally, Captain Reynolds added, addressing Supervisor Wilson, I'll be filing a formal complaint regarding this incident and requesting a review of your staff's training on interacting with passengers with medical devices, particularly veterans with service-related disabilities. Absolutely appropriate, Captain, Wilson agreed. We'll cooperate fully. This behavior doesn't represent our values or training protocols. A young man who had witnessed the entire exchange approached Becky tentatively. Ma'am, I just wanted to say thank you for your service. My brother's in the Army now, and, well, people like you paved the way. His simple acknowledgement seemed to break a dam. Several other passengers murmured similar sentiments or offered respectful nods as Becky stood there, somewhat taken aback by the sudden shift from object of ridicule to person of respect. Colonel Mitchell, Captain Reynolds said, checking his watch, your flight begins boarding in 7 minutes. With your permission, I'd like to escort you to the gate personally. That's not necessary, Captain, Becky replied. I've navigated tougher terrain than an airport terminal. Reynolds smiled slightly. I have no doubt, Colonel, but it would be my honor. Besides, he added with a glance toward his uniform, no one questions a pilot walking to the terminal. For the first time that day, Becky allowed herself a small smile. In that case, Captain Reynolds led the way. As they walked to the terminal, Captain Reynolds maintained a respectful pace beside Becky, occasionally nodding to airport staff who recognized his uniform. Their path cleared almost magically before them. I served with the Marines before joining the airlines, Reynolds explained. 20 years, including 2 tours in Afghanistan. Helicopter pilot. Army EOD, Becky replied. Explosive ordnance disposal. Reynolds whistled softly. The bomb squad. That explains your composure back there. Most people would have lost their cool with that agent. Military discipline dies hard, Becky said. Besides, losing my temper wouldn't have got me to my granddaughter's graduation any faster. Your granddaughter's graduating today? Reynolds asked. Becky nodded, a hint of pride warming her voice. Master's degree in engineering. First in our family to go that far. They reached the gate just as pre-boarding was announced. Reynolds spoke briefly with the gate agent, who nodded and made some entries into her computer. Colonel Mitchell, Reynolds said, turning back to Becky, your original seat was an economy, correct? Yes, row 23, I believe. We have an open seat in first class today, Reynolds said. I've taken the liberty of upgrading you, with the airline's compliments. Becky shook her head. That's very generous, Captain, but not necessary. I disagree, Reynolds replied firmly. It's a small token of respect after what you endured. Besides, he added with a slight smile, first class has more legroom, better for your prosthetic on a 3-hour flight. Seeing her hesitation, he continued more quietly. Colonel, sometimes accepting courtesy isn't about what you need. It's about allowing others to express their respect in the ways available to them. It was a kind of insight that could only come from someone who understood military mindset, the reluctance to accept special treatment, the instinct to decline accommodation. Becky considered his words, then nodded. Thank you, Captain Reynolds. I accept. Excellent. Please board whenever you're ready. I'll see you on the aircraft shortly. As Becky handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, she noticed a young woman's respectful nod. Thank you for your service, Colonel. Enjoy your flight. The flight to Chicago was the most comfortable Becky had experienced in years. The first-class seat provided ample space for her prosthetic, and the flight attendants treated her with quiet respect, clearly briefed by Captain Reynolds. Before takeoff, Reynolds had made a subtle announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to have Colonel Rebecca Mitchell, a decorated Army veteran, on our flight today. She's traveling to her granddaughter's graduation ceremony. The simple acknowledgement had prompted spontaneous applause from the cabin, leaving Becky both touched and slightly embarrassed by the attention. By the time she landed in Chicago, the incident had already gained traction on social media. A passenger's video of Captain Reynolds confronting Parker had gone viral, with thousands of comments praising the pilot's intervention and condemning the security agent's behavior. The airline issued a statement commending Captain Reynolds and announcing a new partnership with veterans organizations to improve travel experiences for wounded warriors. The Airport Security Authority published a formal apology to Becky and revealed plans for enhanced sensitivity training for all personnel. 2 days later, as Becky proudly watched her granddaughter cross the stage to receive her diploma, her phone buzzed with news alert. The security agency had implemented immediate policy changes regarding screening procedures for passengers with prosthetics and other medical devices. Her stand for dignity and Captain Reynolds' stand for respect had created ripples far beyond that security checkpoint. Sometimes, Becky reflected, the most important battles weren't fought on distant battlefields, but in everyday moments when people chose to stand up for what was right. If you respect our veterans, comment, honor, below, and share.